The following is just a brief taste of my awesome experience on the Last Minute Wrestling podcast, which I highly urge that you check out. Stay with the entire video to the end so you could find out how you could listen to the entire interview as well as many others. But for now, take it away, Frank.
And since you mentioned John Cena, do you know what the name Cena, which is not pronounced like that in Italian, do you know what that means?
No, but I am eager to learn right now.
Cena, which is pronounced Cena, imagine it like CHE, and Cena means dinner. So he is literally John Dinner.
No kidding.
And that's one of the weirdest surname ever, because I personally don't know anybody with that surname in Italy. It sounds like something that you may find in the southern part of Italy, to me, which is probably because there were so many migrants from that part of Italy to the United States. Of course, our most famous import probably was Al Capone, which you may have heard of.
Yeah, maybe. So it rings a bell.
Yeah, from like Sicily, this kind of part of Italy. But still.
I like that you said kind of part of Italy, because that's what I hear very often, that Sicily's like kind of like Italy, but it's not 100%.
Well, I'm going to reveal you and to all of our listeners a secret right now. Italy really doesn't exist. Trust me.
Really?
It's a weird country. And,
yeah, it's a relatively new nation, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, it's 150 years old, a little more than 150, and but the real problem is that the Italian people were created between the First and Second World War, because there were many different. I will use the word kingdoms, even though it's not appropriate. But there were. You imagine this small country divided in 100 different regions, different provinces, different kingdoms in some cases, and during the First World War, they just put on a uniform to some people from Sicily, for example, or from Milan. They spoke totally different languages. And they said, okay, now you're Italian, and people said something like, what's Italy? It's that thing, that uniform that you have right now, and you have to fight for that country. Okay, cool. That's really something that many people don't know, as well as the fact that in Italy, people, generally speaking, tend not to speak Italian.
Mm. Yes, yeah.
That may sound weird. We have hundreds of different dialects, which in some cases can be quite close to Italian, and in some other cases, for example, Sicily and the Sicilian dialect is totally different from Italian. Like really we're talking another language with different words, different meanings, and people mostly speak their own dialects, and they use the Italian just like in. When you have to study at the university, or if you're a politician, you're supposed to speak Italian. This kind of stuff. But really, Italy is not really a country. It's more, a state of mind than what will define a country or a nation.
It's a lot like China in a lot of ways, too. It's like there's so many different, yes, there is a Chinese language, but there's so many different dialects. A lot of people are familiar with Mandarin and Cantonese, but there's actually way more dialects than that, and way more different parts and regions. Yeah. Even though it is its own separate country, Taiwan, I always felt like Taiwan was kind of like Sicily, like Taiwan, what Taiwan is to China, even though it's its own country, is kind of like what Sicily is. And but yes, I'm very glad you bring that up, because it's interesting how when it comes to countries, a lot of people want to shoehorn every country in the world under like the same template they're used to, but the reality is a lot of countries don't work like that.
Ciao, this is Frank Manolini from the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast. If you've enjoyed this clip of the chat I had with Dave and want to hear the full interview, search the Last Minute Wrestling Podcast on all of the main pod platforms. You will find many other interviews centered around the business side of pro wrestling in Europe and all over the world. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me on Twitter at LMW Podcast and subscribe to the channel to get new content every week. Thank you so much to Dave from Dave Knows Wrestling for giving me this opportunity. I've been Frank Manolini. Bye bye and stay safe.